Welcome to Logistics Unplugged. My name is Brian BIalock, and I'm your host, and I'm happy to jump in today to all things logistics. So let's pull back the curtain, take a look under the hood, and have a great discussion. It is my absolute pleasure to be joined today by Eric Stamm. Eric is the Manager of Software Development for BlueGrace Logistics. And Eric, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So I'm excited. I have a deep love of technology, and I'm excited about what I see it doing in our industry. So we're going to talk about that, and Eric's going to lead us in that discussion. But before we do, we always like to make sure we get to know the guest, and the audience does too. So we're going to talk about a few things that I know about you, Eric. And don't be mad. One of the things that I know is that you and my boss have this ongoing ping pong challenge. So I really want you to know, and I won't tell anybody, I won't tell them, who's really the better player?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about our records, I definitely hold more wins than he has over me because we don't play games now. We just practice.
Okay.
It's never a game. So even if he is better than me now, it's not on the record. So
Okay, we won't officially publish that. Sorry, Andy. So I know that you got a couple of things that are unique that I'm excited about. You're a car guy. Tell me a little bit about that, Eric.
yeah, so just growing up, that's something that my dad and me always had in common. Loved cars ever since I was a kid. So big Chevy guy, Corvette guy. So was finally able to buy one back in 2019, the last year of the manuals. So I just wanted that experience and wanted to be able to have that manual experience. But love exotics, kind of all cars. So, there's always a new one that I want, but some of those things are going to be stifled by other life events. So
Speaking of life events, congratulations, new dad.
yeah,
Yeah.
very, very new, two and a half months. So first kid, brand new experience.
That is very exciting. Congratulations. Little boy, right?
Yes.
What is his name?
His name's Parker.
Parker. How cool. So mine is 28, and it never changes. We are just as close as the day that she decided to join me in the world. So you have a lot to look forward to. So I'm excited for you. Congrats. And I know we talked about the dream car, and that's something you shared with your dad, the love of Chevys and all that. And usually things are driving to a point, right? When we're a kid, we start picking up habits. We start engaging in things, and some of those things drive us toward careers and the things that we're going to do in the rest of our life. I don't know that it was technology for you. So when you were a kid and you were thinking about, what do I want to do when I grow up? Was there something that popped up anywhere that made you believe that technology would be a field that you would wind up in?
Yeah, so that's actually a good question. I've been in tech pretty much my entire life. So my dad actually has been a developer for as long as I can remember. He was in the Air Force, but then he went and he was completely self-taught software engineer. And that was something that, I remember being 11 years old and making my own servers in my bedroom. My dad teaching me how to build, at the time it was video games, but I always wanted to build servers for me and my friends to be able to play the same game on. So from a very young age, I would say that I was already learning how to do a lot of things that I use still today in my career when I was a kid, but that was a hobby. I loved it. So always had a passion for this. I kind of was lucky when I went to college. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I guess I'm very fortunate in that regard.
That just kept following that. Was there, all right, I'm gonna go unconventional on you. Sometimes there's an event, a movie, a song, or something that inspires you when you're young. I will say I was a really mediocre boxer, Eric, but I did have the privilege to be able to at least kind of call myself a pro fighter. And I think I got that inspiration watching the first Rocky movie, which please don't judge how old I am from that, back in the bicentennial age. Was there a movie, an event, a song, something that was an extra jolt of inspiration for you to head into the tech world?
I wouldn't say a movie or anything like that. I would really attribute my love for when I was a kid for video games as the thing that really got me into the technology industry. And it wasn't even so much that I wanted to make games, just understanding and loving what it took to build them behind the scenes and working with a team. And so I always thought that was really cool. But that's probably more than anything my inspiration.
Was there a number one game? What was the game that you loved the most?
2001, I started playing a game called Counter-Strike. And to this day, I still play it. So it's evolved, but not too much. But yeah, that's been the one.
I like it. All right, now we know a little bit about Eric. Let's jump right in. I want to talk today about technology and how it fits into our industry. Obviously, we are in the transportation industry. We help things get from the seller to the buyer and help everyone in between and make sure it gets there. But technology is a big part of that, maybe even more so now, Eric, than it has ever been. So talk to us a little bit about just the general evolution of technology in logistics. And I know that's a broad one, so you can narrow it down wherever you want.
Yeah, so I started in this industry, transportation, 10 years ago. Coming from completely different industries, I was in the healthcare space, pharmaceutical space before this, doing something that had a lot more regulations around it. So I think I'll start there. The standards and regulations in the industry has been one of the biggest evolving things that I've seen over the last 10 years. And when I say that, I mean when you talk about the standard way to communicate with carriers, right? It used to be through EDI, and then it was through another technology that was very prevalent back in the early 2000s, which was called SOAP and WCF. And then that was like, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. And now most people have heard of things like REST APIs and just new ways to connect. I've seen a big evolution of carriers now wanting to adopt those technologies, and then all the companies also embracing those technologies as well. So with that being said, there's still a lot that is needing to be updated as well. So
I'm going to ask you to slip a little bit of info in for some of us more technologically challenged, and talk to me about what some of the messages are, what some of the communication is that doesn't really matter to whether people understand what APIs and EDIs are, but what are the messages? What is the information that's being shared, and what are we trying to accomplish with that?
The information is really, again, this is going to sound broad, but it's kind of everything, right? Like all of the communication, the two-way communication, right? It's just creating that contract, that standard contract between the carriers and your TMS platform or your company. So, that was the big reason why something like EDI, electronic data interchange, that's why that was such an important concept back in the day, because it created a standard. Everybody had an agreed upon, call it a contract, of what all of these data fields meant, and there was no ambiguity in it. Whereas nowadays, using something, I'm going to go modern, right? So we're using REST APIs now, right? So when I say REST API, it's literally just, it could be any data whatsoever in any shape. So any fields, any property names, and as you can imagine, everybody calls them something different.
Right.
Right. So that's one of the things that it's gotten easier to connect with people, but also there's not a standard anymore.
Right.
So.
I know we sat down and talked a little bit before we got started today, and standardization, that's a big thing. And there's companies that are trying to create some type of standardization. What do you think is going to happen there? Where do you see this getting to so that it does make that a little bit easier to communicate from one platform or one service to another?
Yeah, I definitely think there's some leaders in the space already, and they're big names that most people know about. Creating that abstraction layer where one person can call one of these companies and then they don't have to understand the different mechanisms to talk to N number of carriers now is just really, really big. And again, I think there are going to be the clear winners in that space. And it's also really important for companies that want to innovate and expand their TMS. I remember 10 years ago, the thought of doing this was like, we're going to have to staff a team to create the connections with every single carrier. That's a lot of people to try and do that.
Yes,
so it's a big value offering now, having companies that provide that for us.
Yeah, and let's take it a little bit out of the tech world, and let's talk about, we made the statement when we decided to do this podcast that we wanted this to be information that helps not only the companies like BlueGrace that's in logistics, or the companies that ship products, but also the people that are waiting for those products either to arrive at the store or to arrive at their home. Let's talk about what some of this electronic communication means to someone who's waiting for his product. How are things better because of that?
Yeah, if we're talking things like automated tracking and all the new services that we're leveraging, I mean, it's just that real-time visibility, right? You don't have to wait anymore these days. And it should be, in this industry, everything should be in mostly real time now. Down to the ELDs, the electronic logging devices that you have down onto the trucks now that talk with different partners that we use. I mean, we really try and get that to that 100% automation of knowing exactly where a truck is at all times. And I think that's a really important thing in this industry, and to customers' supply chain needs as well, right? So.
Yeah, and Eric, you're giving back the most important asset that any company and their employees have, which is time, right? you can do a lot of things when you're not picking up the phone 25 times to try to find something or order something or hire someone or communicate this information. There's more that you can do. You can focus on whatever it is that your company's core competency is. Or if you and I are out at dinner and I know that I'm getting a couch shipped to my new house before we move in, I don't have to leave dinner early because I'm not sure when it's going to get there, right? Just having that type of real information, real-time communication. So that's the good of it, right? But there's always obstacles in anything. So talk to me a little bit about some of the barriers that you see in this industry, in transportation, on fully implementing technology and taking advantage of all of those benefits.
I think right now the hardest thing is not going all in on something before it's really being proven out to be the service that's going to be the provider for this. So again, we've done this over the years. There's been a lot of new competitors in the space, right, that have a new solution. And I just think it's one of those things where it's hard for me to articulate this, but sometimes there's things that are sold too good to be true in this industry.
Absolutely.
And it's the amount of time that you invest in implementing with a single provider. You just have to really make sure that it's somebody who is going to be around in 5 years, and that your company is not going to have any detriment to spending that time implementing with them. So
that sounds like good stock advice. You should have given me a long time ago, Eric, for some of the earlier purchases I made in my life. So there's always impediments, there's always obstacles, but the future's pretty bright right now with all the things that are happening in technology. And I wouldn't be doing my job to talk tech today if we didn't mention AI. And I know that that's a term that some people look at and go, man, this is exciting. This is going to be the greatest thing ever. And some people are going, the robots are going to replace us. Tell me about AI and how it makes things better in this world, in supply chain logistics.
Yeah, 100%. So we're definitely in the AI bubble right now. And I'm not saying that it's overhyped. Maybe there's some things that have been overvalued, but the concept of what AI can do in this industry is very, very real. So things like the predictive analytics aspect, right? So being able to predict spot rates and being able to accurately negotiate with carriers that you don't have to pick up a phone because you can just provide them the information. You've trained a model, which when I say trained a model, right, that's a very AI specific term. But basically, you're presenting them with the information that is the most important to them, and you don't have to have somebody pick up a phone and do that. We talked about that earlier, but that's the biggest thing. Give people their time back to do the most important part of their job, which is the relationship building, and get them from having to analyze data manually and let something like AI and these trained models do that for them. So that's a big thing in this space. It's hard to explain to a lot of people, but it is something that I'm seeing change the way we do everything.
I'm actually, Eric, I'm actually excited about it. And from my very simple view, I think that there's decisions that somebody needs to make, but they need to make them with as much information as is possible. And there's just not enough time to go get all of the information that's out there. But now you can, right? So there's something that can do that work. There's something that can harvest that information and pull that together and remove that as one of the things off your plate. And like we just said, the most important thing you can give to somebody is time, so that they can go focus on building those relationships and whatever their core competency is, whatever you're building, buying, selling, or using, focus your time and energy on those things. So very excited about that. And one of the topics or areas I was going to go down, you can't get much more future than AI except for the fact that it's here. So we're going to set that one sort of aside, and I want to talk about what you see on the horizon in terms of technology that you're excited about. And I may ask you, where it fits into certain places in our industry, but let's talk about just what's on the horizon out there in terms of technology other than just AI, and talk to me about where you're excited about some of those things.
Well, I mean, outside of AI, if we're talking about technology, and again, this is not necessarily industry specific, but just all of the capabilities still, it's nothing new, but the capabilities that the cloud is unlocking for us to be able to just build quick and all the new solutions. There's so many services out there that we have access to now to build out, again, outside of AI, to build rapid solutions for people. So I think that that's another thing in the industry, if we were talking about, just everybody should be thinking about the competitive advantages of using something like an AWS or an Azure to move their data centers to, and kind of be able to evolve and stay relevant with other technologies that are out there. So there's thousands of capabilities that are unlocked the second that you move on to one of them. So, yeah.
And I guess that goes into one of those, you might not like it, but if everybody else is doing it, like you said, you can't give away a competitive advantage that someone else may have if you're in an industry that needs to access better technology, more storage, all the things that in real time you need. And it's funny, to put it into the normal nerdy real world that I live in, I don't have to worry about my DVR filling up at 20 movies anymore because there's enough space out there to see everything, to do everything, and to have access to everything. So how can you not be excited about that, right?
Yeah, and I mean, going back to, right, people need that real-time visibility. Well, if you don't move to something modern like the cloud, then you risk your services going down, right? So you might have everything automated, but you have no disaster recovery plans or high availability, where that's something that's just really, really important now is the SLA time, right? You know, your agreements of, hey, we can't go down, right? In this industry, you can never really go down.
Nope.
So
Absolutely not. And it's funny, in the original days of data centers, when you've got, you know, raised floor and fire suppression, stringer systems, and harmonic distortion, all that crap, shielded pair wires, and the world is not quite as large. It's larger and smaller at the same time. You need less space to do more things, and taking advantage of all the technology that's available to help you do that. So, Eric, I'm super excited about everything we have going here, and I'm gonna throw you an audible. And I'm going to talk about, in the world that we're in logistics, and this does affect everyone. It affects the shipper, it affects the logistics companies, it affects the buyers. There's more than one mode, right? And I happen to know that you've done some work on doing some things to help invite the potential of other modes into some of our conversation. And I know this is a little bit of a logistics question, but you're smart, so you'll pick this up anyway. Talk about how looking at things not just from a shipment level in our world, but looking at orders and being able to have technology that could care less about the mode and making the right decision. Talk about how technology can fit into that world and take us from something that's an order to something that is a shipment and getting it out to the consumer.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the name of the game right now, right? Is everybody uses these massive ERP systems, right? And so you have to take their order level data and you have to figure out the best way to structure those orders. So we're talking optimization, right? And then we're talking about how you partner with people that have the full service capabilities and offerings to be able to execute on that optimization. And so, again, not to go back to AI, but even that can be leveraged in this scenario here where we're talking about decisions that need to be made. And that's something very real that everybody's going to start talking about. A lot of that's done through very mathematic algorithms today.
Sure.
But that can also be very time intensive, right? That's why some of this takes a long time. So just like when you go on ChatGPT and you type in a question and it responds in a second, we're going to get better and better at being able to do that analysis in the future. And it's just going to become an industry standard in a couple of years' time. So it's kind of what I would say on that front. It's very, very cool because, again, somebody coming into this industry in a tech space, I didn't know the difference between orders and shipments when I started here.
Yeah.
I knew what an ERP was, but it's very cool to help customers like that solve problems, and doing it through technology is also very neat because of the amount of orders that some of these customers have. It's a really fun problem to solve, actually.
It is. We talk about AI and something that can make really fast decisions. I was never awesome at Tetris, but an AI model probably is really good at that. So figuring out how to take utilization of a trailer, if you're the LTL shipper, to figure out how to drive down cost because you're able to capitalize on as much possible freight on a truck as you can. That doesn't just mean something to them. That utilization helps them reduce costs, which benefits you when you're receiving your goods on the other side, and helps us when we're trying to be able to differentiate. Why use the company that you work for, Eric? Why use the company that you guys are working with now? Well, if they're doing a good job of finding ways to drive out costs, reduce your freight as a percentage of goods, and help you figure out how to put that in the hands of your consumers and the right consumers in the right place, all of these things that are going out and grabbing all this information can't do anything but make that better. So I'm always excited when I can sit with somebody a lot smarter than me and learn a little bit. So Eric, I thank you so much for doing that for me today, and I thank the audience so much for listening to us today and letting us share a little bit with you. And we look forward to seeing you next time. And Eric, I can't thank you enough for being here with us for the discussion today.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a wrap, folks. We'll see you next Tuesday.